Chapter 4. The initial session providing a cognitive rationale. During the first session, provide the client with an introduction to cognitive therapy and describe how it might help. This is best done in the form of a brief demonstration of the cognitive model. And the second important point is that we get right to the business of symptom reduction. Now it may sound counterintuitive, but spending time taking detailed history gets in the way. Initially, we just want to get a sense of clients' chief complaints, the history of presenting problems, any precipitating issues, is the patient currently suicidal or homicidal, and any history of abuse. Adherence to specific cognitive and behavioral tenets in early session helps not only overcome pessimism, which is pervasive early on, but also starts achieving symptom relief, which enhances the quality of therapeutic relationship. Introducing the basic approach. Assessing and monitoring symptoms. Patients are asked to complete a brief self-report depression measure before each session. Provide a rapid assessment of symptom severity and to identify those most problematic for the patient. For example, suicidal wishes that require specific attention. In the early years, it was the original Beck'S depression inventory and later the revised BDI-2 when it became available. But any good self-report instrument will suffice. The important message here is to monitor patient symptoms on a regular basis across the course of the treatment. The PHQ-9 is administered at every session and has shown to enhance not only patient response but also system-wide recovery rates. Listening for cognitive themes. We are always watchful for the core aspects of the negative cognitive triad, that is self, world and future, as these are common to the disorder. Plus, we need to closely monitor for other signs of depression, like withdrawal from social contact and loss of interest. Setting the agenda. After initial introductions, we set an agenda to make sure that the patients get a chance to work on the things about which they care the most. We take the lead but encourage the patients to join in. As said, the initial agenda includes obtaining a brief history, telling the patient about cognitive therapy, setting goals, and choosing the first steps to be taken towards those goals. We then ask for feedback. How does that sound to you? Is there anything else you would like to be sure to talk about today? Rating the initial mood. We then ask the patient to rate their mood. On a scale of 0 to 100, with 0 being the worst you have ever felt and 100 being the best you have ever felt, how would you rate your mood right now? If there is any confusion, we tell the patient it's like using thermometer to take affective temperature. If the patient still has difficulty with the task, any system that communicates greater or lesser to some degree works. For example, smiley faces or even colors. Assessing current complaints. If an assessment has already been done, we briefly summarize the key points from the intake and then ask the patient, do I have the gist of it right? What else would you like me to know about what's going on? Alternatively, we might ask something along the line, I have read your assessment, but can you fill me in on what brings you into therapy? If no assessment was done prior to this session, we ask the client to describe their major concerns, which we then summarize to be sure we got them right. Like the following. So let me see if I get it. You have been out of work for 2 years and your oldest son is using drugs. You feel so depressed you don't even get out of bed most of the time. I also understand your mother passed away last year. It sounds like you have been having a very rough time. I'm sure there is more to tell, but do I have the basics? If the answer is affirmative, follow with, I'm glad that I got the gist. We will find out more along the way, but for now let me explain what this type of therapy is all about. And you can tell me how it sounds. Providing a cognitive rationale. The major goal in the first treatment session is to provide a rationale for cognitive therapy. How thoughts, feelings, physiology and behavior are connected. We give a brief overview of the cognitive model, providing examples. How automatic negative thoughts can lead to unpleasant effects and ineffective efforts to cope behaviorally. This works best when we draw examples from the material client has provided. We then ask the patient how they would have felt if they had interpreted the same situation in a different way, knowing that their automatic negative thoughts were not as true as they seemed at the time. This is the essence of cognitive therapy. The ABC cognitive model expanded. One way to explain the cognitive model is with a graphic representation wrapped around a brief demonstration. This is the ABC expanded model. The above figure is adapted from the 5-part model put forward by Beck'S and Mooney and depicts an expanded version of the ABC cognitive model. They expanded the concept of the environment beyond the single triggering antecedent event to include the whole range of contextual influences that contributed to shaping the way the individual responds. They also replaced physiology with biology to better incorporate whole body responses to different challenges. Each component can be both the cause and the consequence of other components of the model. Examples: how mood affects thinking. Anyone who has come home from work in a foul mood is likely to respond with annoyance to otherwise benign comment from a loved one. Physiological reactions too can both be the cause and consequence. For example, a benign physiological sensation can be catastrophically misinterpreted as an incipient heart attack in a panic disorder. Example of demonstration of the model with a recent event from the patient's life. Event: a major fight with his sister the day before in the hospital room of his mother, who has recently experienced a recurrence of her cancer. We now begin to fill components of the situation into the 5-part model with patient's help. Environment: the patient was in a hospital room with his dying mother when his estranged sister took him to task for not being there for the family. Feelings: sad, angry and hopeless. Physiological reactions: tension in his head and neck. Behaviors: his impulse was to speak harshly to his sister, although he did not act on it, and a strong urge to start drinking again, something he resisted. Coming on to cognition. I'm a complete screw-up who can never do anything right, but she has no right to pick on me, nothing ever works for me. We would now ask the client to draw lines to connect each specific effect to one or more of the specific thoughts. For example, I'm a complete screw-up might go with sad, she has no right to pick on me might go with angry, and nothing ever works out for me might go with hopelessness. Next, we would invite the client to consider the coherence between his thoughts and feelings. How could someone not feel sad if he believed he was a complete screw-up? Second, between his thoughts and his physiology. How could you not experience a sense of tension if you thought you were being criticized? And finally, his thought and behavior. Now, would you have spoken harshly to your sister if you did not think she was being unfair? The goal here is to explore how the thoughts in this situation drove his feelings, physiology, and subsequent behaviors. We then illustrate the process of alternative explanation and paths. If you are a complete screw-up, how is it that you were there for your mother yesterday? And what does that say about you? Alternatively, it can go something like this. I know I have not always been here for you and mom, but I am here with you now. The above method conveys the essence of the model and shows how the therapy will provide relief from depression by highlighting specific points at which the clients can intervene in the process. For example, physiology by exercise and meditation, behavior by experimenting with different actions, and beliefs by cognitive restructuring. By laying out the model on a whiteboard or a sheet of paper helps the client to distance themselves from their realities and reactions, helping them view the problem from a third-person perspective. They can even take a picture of the completed diagram to refer later. Flawed character versus flawed strategies, theory A versus theory B. One of the first things to ask is for patients' understanding of how and why they have become depressed. Most believe that there is some stable flaw in their character that is responsible for their disappointing lot in life and by extension their depression. The most common perceived deficits are: I am unlovable when the client is concerned about interpersonal relationships, or I am incompetent if the client's disappointments fall more in the achievement domain. We then encourage our clients over the next several weeks to determine whether their disappointments are more a consequence of having a flawed character or having chosen ineffective strategies to pursue their goals. And then we proceed to put out competing theories on a single sheet of paper so that they can be tested against one another throughout the course of the therapy, and is referred as pitting theory A versus theory B or character versus strategy. This table shows a sample of alternative rationale and how to compare theories and shift the core of the problem from character flaws to strategy flaws. Performance under stress, the Yerkes-Dodson law. When the clients describe multiple experiences that they consider evidence of their failing and defects, we ask them whether they were nervous or aroused at the time of the original event. If so, we explain them the Yerkes-Dodson principle. If we plot importance/arousal on the horizontal axis and performance on the vertical axis, our performance improves as things become more important to us and we become more aroused. But only to a point. Virtually all people become less competent behaviorally when they get pushed too far. We then explain the graph with a simple example. Suppose your car is parked on a sunny street at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with plenty of people around. How long does it take you to unlock your car? Patient: usually only a couple of seconds. Therapist: now suppose your car is parked in the same spot but it's 3 o'clock in the morning in a cold and driving rain, and there is no one else on the street except a large figure heading in your direction. Now how long does it take you to unlock your car? Patient: considerably longer. The reason is that there is a basic principle of motivation called the Yerkes-Dodson law. At this point we draw the model and show them how performance varies under stress. Then we continue. If you did not want to get in your car, you would not even bother to unlock the door. That is, at low importance you would not perform. As the importance or arousal goes up, so does your performance. On a bright sunny day with plenty of people around, you had no problem unlocking your car in a matter of seconds. But look what happened to your performance when it really became important to get into your car. It took considerably longer. That is the Yerkes-Dodson principle in action. Self-fulfilling prophecies. The second logical trap is allowing their negative expectations to influence their behavior. Patient did not get what he wants because he was dissuaded by his own negative expectations to even try. This flowchart shows how self-fulfilling prophecies work. Not getting what you want is not evidence of incompetence or unlovability if you did not act. Important preliminaries to getting started. Set treatment goals. When asked what they would like to work on during the therapy, many patients reply with something general such as, "I just want to feel better again." We clarify what that means for them. For example, being able to go back to work, beginning to date after a breakup, or enjoying their grandchildren again. Targeting specific outcomes help the patient to set short-term goals that are clear. For example, I will apply to 5 jobs this week. I will get out of the house at least twice. I will start the chores I have been avoiding. The long-term goals are also specific and realistic. I will come to some decision about my marriage, or I will start looking for a caregiver for my dad. Next, we work with our clients to choose which symptoms to target first. They may be affective, such as sadness or anhedonia; motivational, such as a wish to escape or avoid; cognitive, such as difficulty concentrating; behavioral, such as lying in bed or withdrawing from others; or physiological, that is, changes in sleep, appetite, or interest in sex. Assess for suicide risk. Always ask about suicidal ideation directly, not only at the first session, but also at the start of future sessions. Or check the self-report measures like BDI-2 or PHQ-9. To open the topic, in the first session ask, have you ever thought that life was not worth living? Have you ever thought about harming yourself? And are you thinking about killing yourself now? If the patient indicates any such ideations, we ask about specific plans or intent to die. If the patient describes a plan, has access to the means, and has a strong intent to die, hospitalization may be necessary. Expectations regarding therapy. It is important to elicit the patient's expectations regarding the treatment as early as possible. There can be two extremes. Some patients hope for a miracle, while others, because of their pathological pessimism and previous unsuccessful therapies, may believe that therapy cannot produce enduring change. Broach the topic like this. Cognitive therapy works for most people, especially if they work on doing the things between the sessions that we will discuss. If our first strategies work, then great, but if not, we will try other strategies. Also make it clear that there are often ups and downs in the treatment. If the patients are not prepared for these flurries, they can experience severe disappointment if one occurs. When these setbacks are reframed as opportunities to learn, anxiety regarding the fluctuations often declines. Assigning homework. Extensive use of homework is made to extend and amplify the insights and progress made in the session. But there is no single homework assignment that is ideal for each patient. Sometimes the homework flows naturally from the goals discussed. At other times, the appropriate homework flows from the client's symptom level. Activity scheduling. It is very helpful to schedule specific activities at specific times before the next session. These activities are written down on a blank grid with a space for each hour of the day, 7 days a week, called the activity schedule. The items recorded usually depend on symptom severity and can range from basic activities of daily life like taking a shower or going for a walk to relatively complex tasks such as inviting a friend for lunch. We usually meet several times a week at first and schedule every waking hour between sessions until their mood begins to lift and their energy returns. Self-monitoring. For the patients who are still functioning well, we usually start by training them in systematic self-monitoring. In the activity schedule, we ask the patient to write down in just a couple of words what they did at each hour and rating their mood at the end of that hour on 0 to 100 point scale. We also often ask the patient to note with a P the hour in which the activity has given them a sense of pleasure, and to indicate with an M those instances in which they experienced a sense of mastery or achievement. These records provide an overview of the client's ongoing level of activities, mood, and serves as a baseline. Many patients find filling out the form extremely helpful in terms of showing them how much time they waste, example on internet, or how little pleasure they tend to schedule into their daily lives. Some patients having a specific assignment gives them the sense that they are on their way to a positive change. But then few reject the homework out of hand. Capsule summaries and soliciting feedback. Capsule summaries. Near the end of the first session, we asked the client something along the lines of, "What are you taking away from today?" or "Was anything useful for you today?" We then asked the client to summarize the main points that they took away from the session, with a particular emphasis on the cognitive model. For some, it becomes clear that key points were missed. If so, we go back over the cognitive model again to emphasize its importance. Feedback. We want to emphasize that the therapy works best when it is collaborative, and that the patient's feedback is not only welcomed but necessary. We ask the patient to give feedback about how we came across. Did anything rub you the wrong way today? Did anything we talked about seems like it wouldn't work for you? Or did I leave anything out? If the patient has a negative statement such as, "This all sounds fine, but it will never work for me," and we can respond with, "That sounds like something important for us to test. Are you okay with the idea that we will test that belief in therapy over the next few weeks?" Capsule summaries and feedback are also sought during the session itself, after key points are made or novel strategies are introduced. Do you have a sense of why I am asking you to do this, or do you see why it might be helpful to you? Is there anything you can think of that might get in the way of your doing it? Mood rating. We end the session and all the subsequent sessions by asking the patient to reassess his mood, again on a scale of 0 to 100. If there is no uptick in the mood, we add, "That lets me know how badly you are feeling. I appreciate your honesty. Let's keep an eye on this, so that we make sure we are working together on this thing that matters to you." We want to convey some important messages in the first session. First, that we understand the patient's suffering and can suggest a process by which it might be alleviated. Second, that we can teach them useful skills so that they can tackle future problems effectively and become their own therapists. And finally, we cannot guarantee that a given client will get better, but the only way to find out is to work at the therapy. Summary and conclusions. In cognitive therapy, we want to hit the ground running so as to produce symptom relief as rapidly as possible, so that they start doing homework between sessions and begin to test their negative beliefs. We move rapidly onto demonstration of how cognitive therapy works using the 5-part model to explain the links among thoughts, feelings, physiology, and behavioral impulses regarding some recent event that caused distress or was poorly handled.